Welcome back to the Aubergine Chef. Now today we'll be making lemon meringue pie, and lemon meringue pie consists of three parts. It consists of the pie shell, the lemon pie filling, and then the meringue on top. So it's not a very difficult recipe at all. It's actually pretty quick to make. It's just a little time consuming if you're making all three parts from scratch, because you gotta wait for things to cool down, and then you have to make everything. So hopefully you can learn how to make it from scratch, and then if you want to take shortcuts where you want to take shortcuts, you can see where you want to take shortcuts. Most people take shortcuts with the pie shell, and they'll either buy already made pie dough or an already made pie crust, or they'll even use like a graham cracker crust or cookie crust, like a vanilla wafer crust, instead of using actual pie dough. That's where most people take a shortcut. But anyway, so the first thing you want to do is you want to make your pie dough. Now, I have a separate pie dough recipe. It's called a basic pie dough episode, and that's available on my blog, www.theauberginechef.com. And it shows you basically how to make pie dough and with a fluted crust. And I don't usually, since I have so many pie episodes, I just, refer to that episode, and I'll have it in my blog, the episode directly in my blog, the recipe in my blog, and the same blog post. So you don't have to look for it or anything like that. It'd be really easy to find. Anyway, so the pie shell I'm making isn't going to be fluted. It's going to be regular because we're going to put so much meringue on top, you're not going to really be able to see it anyway. And so what we want to do is we want to pre-bake our pie shell. Now this is an issue because if you don't have anything in your pie to hold it down, like an apple filling or anything like that, a fruit filling, then it'll puff up, it'll flake up. And you don't want it to puff up because then it gets all warped in the bottom and then it crumbles in the bottom when you put your filling in, and it's just not good to work with. So what you can do, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. This is the way that I learned in school, and it works really well. What you want to do is, well, actually, let me bring the camera over here so you can see. Okay, so one thing you can do is you can poke a lot of holes in the bottom using a fork. This is called docking the dough. This works really well with tart shells too that are made with a cookie crust. And this will help release any steam that's built up so the pie won't puff up. Now the thing about docking your dough is that sometimes it'll still puff up and sometimes the sides will sag in one way or another. So what you can do for that is you can put another pie shell that fits right into your pie dough, or right into your already rolled out pie shell. Fix the side a little bit so that way it's not like all oozing out. And then what you want to do is you can put something in here to weigh it down, like baking beans, just anything that can bake, like a heavy metal object that can withstand the temperature of the oven. Sometimes some people use a coffee filter that's filled with baking beans or whatever, but if you have another pie shell or a pie tin that fits exactly the same way, it works really well. Then what you can also do is, if you don't want to use baking beans, what you can do is put your pie shell on top and then put a sheet pan on top of that, and the sheet pan will weigh it down. Basically, all you're trying to do is you're trying to weigh it down. Really good pie pans for this would be glass, because glass is so heavy, so you really wouldn't have to put anything in it because the glass would weigh it down so much. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and bake this until it's done. You can lift this up and you can see if it's brown or not on the edges. Remember, it's just a very light brown. You don't want it to be like burnt or anything like that. So you're just looking for a light, almost like sugar cookie brown, very tan. And what we're going to do is we're going to bake it 400 degrees for about 8 to 10 minutes. Then, after you finish baking it, let it cool down all the way before starting on the next step. So our pie crust came out of the oven. It took about maybe closer to 15 minutes for it to bake all the way. As you can see, it's kind of lightly brown on the edges, so it's not too dark. One thing you might want to remember to do, though, as I forgot to tell you, is you might want to either grease the bottom of the pan that you put on top, or put a piece of parchment paper in the middle to help prevent it from sticking. You will also probably need to use a knife to go around the edges to help loosen it, because otherwise it'll just break in half or something else stick. And mine stuck a little bit, and I totally forgot all about it until that point. Also, the sheet pan was a little bit heavy, as you can see. It put a line through the top of my crust, because it was just the sheet pan was just so heavy, and then the pie shell on top of it. So keep that in mind too. It's not a huge deal because we're putting a meringue on top for this pie, but for other pies that you might see the crust, like other cream pies, that might be an issue for you. So just keep that in mind, that sometimes baking beans might be more appropriate for that purpose because they won't put that line in there, but they'll still hold the crust in place. So I'm going to show you a trick that we did at some of the resorts I worked at, or the resort I worked at. I think other places did it too. One thing you can do, and one thing that's an issue with cream pies, is like lemon meringue pie or chocolate cream pie or coconut cream pie, is that the crust gets soggy over time because it's absorbing the water from the filling, and especially if it's refrigerated, and it's just a mess, and so it gets soggy and it loses its crispness. So one thing is you can prevent it from getting crispy is serve it the same day. If you make a lemon meringue pie today, serve it today, and it'll be okay. But if you're not going to serve it right away, and you can just do it even if you aren't going to serve it right away, you can do something that we did at the resort, which was put some coating chocolate on it. Now, coating chocolate isn't like real chocolate in that it has cocoa butter taken out and just replaced with vegetable oil. So you don't have to worry about tempering it. All you have to do is just melt it down and use it. And you can find coating chocolate in a baking supply store. Michael's will have it in the candy section. And so coating chocolate is really easy to use. And so what you do is you melt it down in the microwave, and then you just paint the inside of your shell with the chocolate. And this will act as a kind of barrier to the moisture without adding a whole lot of flavor. Now, it will add some flavor, but you don't have to worry about it contributing a lot of flavor. Unless you like the flavor of white chocolate. So just paint the shell. You can paint the sides a little bit, but more importantly, you want to paint the bottom. And remember, this, like I said, this step is completely optional, so if you don't want to do it or you don't have time to do it, don't worry about it. And then after you paint the bottom of the shell, what you want to do next is put it in the refrigerator for a couple minutes so it can set up. So that way it's not all fluid when you put the filling in, because if it's fluid when you put the hot filling in, then what's the point, right? So go ahead and paint the bottom of the shell if you're going to do that. And then let it set up. Okay, so while your white chocolate is setting up, we can go ahead and weigh out the ingredients for the filling. Now, you want to have several bowls. In this bowl, we have 1 3/4 ounces of cornstarch, 3 ounces of granulated sugar, and a pinch of salt. And to this, we're going to add 2 eggs, 2 whole eggs. Okay, and you just want to whisk that all together until it's nice and uniform. Okay, so once you have your egg mixture mixed together real well, no lumps or anything like that, make sure it's completely smooth. You want to put in a pot 1 pound of water, the zest of 1½ lemons, and 3 ounces of sugar. And then in a separate bowl, you want to have the juice of 3½ lemons. Now I still have half a lemon to go, so I can show you what I mean. So, to zest a lemon, I like to use something called a microplane. It's basically just like a bell zester, but on a stick or a wood file. It's very convenient to use. So after you wash your lemon, all you have to do is just drag your microplane along the side. And it will grate all the zest for you. And you just add that to your pot. Now to juice your lemon, the best thing to do is to roll it, and that helps gets it going. Make sure you get the most juice out of it. Mine actually broke a little bit. And then just cut it open and then juice it. Now, most times you want to juice your lemon upwards, so that way you can hold the seeds and catch them. But if you're doing 3½ lemons worth of juice, that's a lot. So it's not really a great way to get the seeds out. So what you do is just strain it afterward, and I'll show you how to do that. Now I know that 3½ lemons is a little bit of a weird measurement, especially since lemons can come in different sizes and you can get different amounts of juice out of your lemons. So I'm going to go ahead and weigh out my lemon juice while I'm straining it, so that way you guys have an idea of how much lemon juice I'm using. And I've got about 5¼ ounces of lemon juice. So you probably want to be somewhere around 5 ounces of lemon juice. Once you have that weighed out, you also want to weigh out 1 ounce of butter, just unsalted butter. And then you want to bring your pots to the stove and bring it to a boil. Okay, so once your water mixture comes to a boil with the sugar and the lemon zest on the top of the stove, you want to temper your egg cornstarch mixture with the hot boiling liquid. And to do this, you just slowly add it to your your cornstarch mixture while continuously whisking. And what this does is it warms up your egg mixture without turning the eggs into scrambled eggs. Because if you were just to dump the hot boiling liquid right to the eggs, it would just burn. It would just turn them into scrambled eggs and curdle them. So in order to use it properly, you kind of have to like temper it. Now it's best if you can put the rest of the whole mixture in there, but you don't have to. Once your egg mixture is tempered, add it back into your pot. And then we're just going to whisk this until it is thickened. And so cornstarch usually takes about 5 minutes to thicken. You want to make sure it's thick, and when it starts to bubble and boil, that you continue to cook it for 1 to 3 more minutes to help cook out the cornstarch flavor, to help get it its full thickness, and to make sure that the color is appropriate, because cornstarch gets more translucent as it thickens. And you can see it's already starting to get really thick. And so you want to be careful when you're boiling it, because you don't want to accidentally have it bubble back at you. So kind of like turn your stovetop down a little bit. Don't stop whisking it, because once you stop whisking it, it'll bubble back at you. And kind of bounce back and forth. I'm actually touching the surface and not touching the surface. That way you don't burn yourself. Or if you can just be careful. And if you burn yourself a little bit, it's not a total mess. You'll be fine. You'll live. Okay, once your mixture is boiled for 1 to 3 minutes, go ahead and take it off the stove. Okay, so once your mixture has boiled for 1 to 3 minutes, take it off the stove, and then you want to whisk in the lemon juice and the ounce of butter. And what the butter does, it adds body and shine and flavor to the lemon filling. And so once you have all that, go ahead and add that hot liquid right into your pie shell, your prepared pie shell. And if you can go all the way to the top, great. If you can't, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Okay, and then we're just going to refrigerate this until it's set. And it's probably going to take about an hour for it to set up. And then what we'll do is we'll make the meringue and put it on top. Okay, so our lemon meringue pie, or lemon meringue part, has been sitting in the refrigerator for about an hour. It's actually been probably closer to 2 hours, actually. And we're ready to go ahead and make the meringue. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a French meringue, so it's the easiest meringue to make. I've already got 2 egg whites in here. We need actually only half of one more. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to separate an egg. And so you just crack the egg, open it carefully, let the egg white fall down or drip out, and just pass the egg yolk back and forth. And that's going to get your egg white separated. And then you can just throw away your egg yolks. Okay, so we only need 2.5 egg yolks. So we're just going to measure it out. You can break it up with a fork. That might help out a little bit. And then just pour it in. It's a little bit much. That's okay. So I have about 3 ounces in this one. Normally you want like 2.5 ounces, but that's fine because it's still like 2.5 egg yolks or egg whites. Sorry. And what I did to prepare the bowl, and this is very important, especially for making meringue, is you want to make sure that you wash out your bowl with hot soapy water. You should always do that anyway, right? But also take a paper towel that's been slightly dampened with a little bit of vinegar and wipe the inside of your bowl out, as well as the whip attachment for your mixer. And what that does is it helps clean out any leftover fat or whatever that's still in the bowl that you didn't really get clean or whatever, and it's like, hard to see. And what that does is it get rid of the fat, but it's important to get rid of the fat because if there's any fat in the egg white, it won't whip up, which is important when you're separating it not to get any egg yolk in it, because egg yolk can also prevent it from whipping up. So if you have a problem with really soupy egg whites, that's probably what it is. And so wiping out with vinegar helps. And it's also said that acid helps egg whites whip up a little bit better too. That's why some people will add cream of tartar to it, but the vinegar on the side of the bowl is all you really need. And I never really had a problem with using it anyway, so that's all we really need. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the mixer. Okay, so first go ahead and put your egg whites on and start it on a medium speed. And when it starts getting frothy, then we'll slowly add in our granulated sugar. Okay, now that they're frothy, go ahead and slowly drizzle in your granulated sugar. That's 3 ounces of granulated sugar. Now go ahead and bring it back at the speed, and we're going to whip it until it reaches about medium to stiff peaks. Okay, so we're about medium to stiff peaks, and you can tell because of the way that the meringue forms a stiff peak that doesn't curl or fall down or lose its shape or anything like that. So we're good to come off to the mixer. Okay, so you can pipe the meringue if you want. I just like using a spoon. It's just easier that way. So go ahead and put a couple scoops on top. And just kind of spread it around. Go all the way to the edge. And cover up as much of the yellow as you can. And you can cover up some of the pie crust too, it doesn't matter. Okay, and then the rest of it will be used for kind of adding volume. Now you can double the egg whites if you want lots of meringue. I've been to some dessert cafes that it's like 3 times in height. I don't really like all that much meringue, so you don't really have to use that much, but feel free to double the amount of meringue if you want more. So what I'll do is I'll just spread it out. So it's nice and even. And then I'll just kind of use my spoon and kind of make a very jagged design. Like I said, you can pipe it if you want, especially with a shell border or a star tip. It looks very nice if you go around like in circles. You don't need a lot of meringue. See, you don't need a lot. No reason to waste all your eggs making all that much meringue. Okay, and then for the last thing, you'll need a butane torch or a creme brulee torch. You can also do this in the oven. You can also brown it in the oven. At least we did that in a couple kitchens I worked at. I don't know if this pie would hold up as well, especially with the crust, but just keep that in mind that if you don't have a torch, you can also brown in the oven as an option. So anyway, so turn my torch on. And just see. Keep a metal spoon handy just in case it catches on fire so you can put it out without blowing on it. And just go over it. Now if you can, wait as long as you can before putting the meringue on top and browning it. And that's because the meringue is kind of soft over time, especially if it's sitting in the refrigerator. So it's better to put the meringue on as late as you can if possible. It's not like terrible if you leave it in the refrigerator, but it's better if you put it on later. Okay, and there you go. There is our finished lemon meringue pie with the little brulee on top, or the little browning on top. And that's going to add a little bit more flavor as well. And it's optional. You don't have to do it. If you don't have anything, you don't have to do it. Just keep in mind that if you do it in the oven, it's probably going to have a more even browning, as opposed to if you do it with a torch, where it's like darker in some spots and has that kind of like modern art kind of look where it's kind of like splotchy. So depending on what you're looking for, depends on how you're going to do it. Okay, and that's how we make our lemon meringue pie. Now remember that this pie needs to be refrigerated, and like I said a few minutes ago, the meringue does get softer when it's in the refrigerator and exposed to all that moisture, just because of all the sugar that's in it. So if you see that it's getting soggy, maybe next time do your meringue as late as possible. Also keep in mind that the meringue does have raw egg whites in it, and we didn't really cook it at all, especially since we just made a French meringue or a cold meringue, which is made just by adding granulated sugar, and that's it. You know, usually with an Italian buttercream, you had some 250 degree sugar syrup going in, so, it's kind of cooked. And same thing with the Swiss buttercream, where it's, the egg whites are heated on the stove. It's below 140 when it's heated on the stove, but it's still, cooked. So, but this one is just straight egg whites. So, I've never really gotten sick from eating raw egg whites or anything like that, but if you're uneasy about using egg whites, check your grocery store or your baking supply store or Michael's for meringue powder and make your egg white meringue that way. And that way it'll be food safe and, sanitation safe. You're worried about salmonella. And also that there is, you can find the grocery store, like I saw recently, it's pasteurized eggs. I think that's right. It's pasteurized eggs, where they've been treated so that way the salmonella is supposed to be, killed off and they're safer eggs for meringues. Now I haven't really seen any recently. I think I was in California when I saw those when I was visiting my sister, so I'm not 100% sure if we have them, if they're everywhere, or if they're available everywhere. But just keep in mind that that's another alternative. Now, you probably can't use like egg beaters, egg whites, stuff like the carton eggs in grocery stores, because sometimes they might have some other stuff added to them that prevents them from whipping up. Read the side of the box. The carton should usually tell you not suitable for for whipping or whatever. Now, if you work in grocery stores and stuff like that, and you see that we do get our egg whites in a carton, that's because they've had whipping aid added to them, and they've been treated so that way they will whip up. It's not the same as the egg whites in the grocery store. There's like tons of egg white product. Basically, the egg white product you see in the store is mostly just for like making egg white omelets and healthier cakes and stuff like that. It's just an ingredient. It's not really supposed to be used for whipping anything. But anyway, I can rattle on and on and on about this. But we got our goal. We finished our lemon meringue pie. Remember that it has the pie crust, and you feel free to use vanilla wafer crust or graham cracker crust or whatever crust that you want to use. You don't have to use a pie crust. Remember that it's pre-baked. We're not putting it into a raw pie shell. And then we made our filling on the stove, and it's thickened using eggs, but mostly cornstarch. And we refrigerate it for about an hour or two in a refrigerator setup before we put a meringue on top. And remember, if you want to, feel free to double the meringue. If you want, that big pile of meringue, I find it unnecessary and it's a waste of eggs. But if you're into that, go for it. And remember that you can pipe your meringue too. It looks really cool if you pipe it in like circle spirals and kind of like rosettes, and then you brown it, because then the very delicate spiral actually gets pops out more because when it's brown. So feel free to experiment, change this recipe around, do different things, and make it your own. Anyway, I hope you learned a lot today. Thanks for watching, and remember, the Aubergine Chef demystifying dessert one recipe at a time.